Hi guys, so I am here with my favourite books of 2018. So out of all of the books that I read in 2018, these ones are my absolute favourite. It's not quite a top 10, there's actually 13 books here, but some of them are sort of from the same series. So that's kind of why. Yeah, like I say, these are in no particular order. There's absolutely no way I could rate them from, in order of favourite to least favourite, there's absolutely no way. These are the books that I read over 100 books this year. As I'm as I'm recording this, it is the 30th of December, so I don't think that I'm gonna finish another book that's gonna surpass the books that I have here. I read about 128 books at the time of recording, so I'm really pleased with the amount of books I got read this year. I really surpassed what I thought I would get read, so I'm really happy with that. So yeah, without further ado, let's delve into my favourite books of this year. So the first three are all part of the same series, and they are the second, third and fourth book in Lisa Kleypas's Wallflower series. I absolutely adore Lisa Kleypas, and this series was hands down one of my favourite. I read them literally one after the other. The first book in this series I actually read at the end of last year, so that's why it's not included in my 2018. So yeah, I read these in January. So I have It Happened One Autumn, The Devil in Winter and Scandal in Spring. I loved them all. It's very hard to pick a favourite. If I had to pick favourites out of the four, it would be sort of tied between It Happened One Autumn and The Devil in Winter. I think out of the quartet, these two are my standout favourites. But yeah, that whole series, it's a sort of historical romance series, and yeah, Lisa Kleypas is, as you guys know, one of my favourite historical authors, and that series in particular has been a standout for me. I love it. I also love her Ravenel series, but that series in particular is a favourite. I also wanted to include the book in the Ravenel series that came out this year, but I didn't pick it up to include in this video. But Hello Stranger would also be included on my favourites list from this year. I loved that one as well, and I cannot wait for the next book in that series to come out in 2019. So another favourite this year was As Dusk Dances by Samantha Young. I originally read this on my Kindle and then bought the physical copy because I loved it so much. I read this in just over 24 hours. I was obsessed with it. I didn't want to stop reading it. I loved it so much. It's about a musician called Skylar, and she was part of like a big sort of American band, but then a personal tragedy has really affected her, so she's basically gone off the grid and she's ended up busking on the streets in Scotland. But this one guy recognises her and wants her to sign up for his label basically, and he badgers her until she does. But yeah, I absolutely loved this. It just literally from the get-go grabbed me and I just didn't want to stop reading it. The romance element was just really well done. I love Samantha Young anyway, but this book in particular I just absolutely loved it. I adored it. The next book that I have is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This was a bit of a different book for me in the fact that it's a true story. The characters in this book are real people. It's their real story of how they met in Auschwitz, and but it was interesting because even though it's a true story, it was told in kind of a story way, so it wasn't written as a non-fiction book normally is. It wasn't like a biography, it was written as a story. And it's one of those books where it's really weird to say I enjoyed reading it, because obviously the story that it's about and Auschwitz and everything is just so terrible and just diabolical that it's weird to say I loved reading that book. but the story did really captivate me, and I think knowing that it was a true story was all the more gripping, and you just really wanted to know what happened to these people. At the end, there is actually, you know, there's like a map, there's maps of Auschwitz in there. It just sort of brought it all the more to life, I think, that this, you know, really happened. It was an interesting story, and yeah, it was, I think, really, really well told. So yeah, it was just an emotional read and a really, really powerful one. So yeah, I loved that book. Then I have Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 6th book, I want to say, in the Throne of Glass series. I'd kind of put off reading it because it wasn't sort of, it's a bit of an odd book in that it does follow on from Empire of Storms, but not directly. It doesn't have any of Aelin in it. It is basically like a side book because it's about Cole and, oh my god, what's her name? Begins with an N. Nesrin, there we go. Cole and Nesrin's sort of side quest to go to a different continent and try and recruit people in the big fight, basically, and also to try and heal Cole after the events of Empire of Storms. A few people have found this book boring. A few people are like, should I read it, should I not read it? You kind of have to read it for Kingdom of Ash to fully make sense. If you don't read this, a lot of the things that happen in Kingdom of Ash will make absolutely no sense. But I absolutely really loved it. I was captivated with reading it. I loved reading about Cole. And also the healer, Irene, I'm not quite sure how we pronounce her name. I loved her. She was really spunky. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Just absolutely loved it, and it did set me up nicely for my next favourite book, which is Kingdom of Ash. This is the biggest book that I read in 2018. It is a monster. I think it's just shy of 1,000 pages. Yeah, it's just shy of it. And obviously this is the epic conclusion to the Throne of Glass series. I read this book with, you know, equal parts excitement, equal parts trepidation, because, you know, this is going to be it. Well, Sarah J. Maas says, you know, the door is not forever closed on this world, but, you know, for this cycle, for this initial series anyway, this is the end of, you know, that story arc, and it was just epic. Like I just love this. Chapter 87, people. Chapter 87 will be forever scored upon my heart. This book was just absolutely amazing. It was a really worthy, I think, end to the series. I just loved it, and I'm sad to see it end, but I'm glad that the end was good, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm sad that I'm not expecting, I mean, there is going to be the world of Throne of Glass that I think comes out next year. Well, 2019, I don't know when I'm uploading this, but you know, as for the actual, you know, stories and stuff, like, that's kind of it, and I'm sad, but I'm also like in awe of the series. You know, it's one of my favourite series. So yeah, I loved this book. I'm sad to see it end, but it was just epic. Like, it was such a brilliant book. So on to the next one. I have A Wish for Us by Tilly Cole. This is another book where I originally read it on my Kindle and loved it so much I needed a physical book to add to my collection. This book was just so good. It was another one that when I was reading it, I didn't want to put it down. It just grabbed me. So it's about a guy called Cromwell and, oh, what's her name? Bonnie. There we go. Couldn't remember her name for the life of me. And Bonnie. And Cromwell's kind of like, has the image of, you know, a bad boy. He is a DJ. He does like EDM music. And Bonnie's very much into folk and classical music, and there's kind of a clash there, but they're paired together. They have to do a music project together, and Cromwell just basically gives Bonnie shit all the time, but she tries to give it back to him, and it's kind of, at first it's you know, a hate relationship, but they sort of, you know, have a connection there. and then Bonnie has some secrets of her own that come out. It was such an emotional book. Like, nobody does emotions like Tilly Cole. Like, oh my god, like, it was just such a good book. It was also interesting because the character of Cromwell has something called synesthesia. I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he can like see, he hears colours, so when he hears a certain note or a certain sound, it correlates to a colour, and that's sort of how he's like this musical prodigy, which was very interesting. It was not something I knew anything about, but yeah, I really loved that. I loved it so much, so emotional. Another favourite book was To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. This was an unexpected favourite for me because I went into it I don't know, like I was excited for it, but wasn't really expecting anything, if you know what I mean. And then I just freaking loved it. So it's kind of like there's a mermaid, well, a siren princess, and then a human prince, and they both basically have a mission to kill each other. Lyra is like siren royalty, and she targets like the heart of princes, so she literally kills princes and rips out their hearts and keeps them in her, like, you know, underwater bedroom basically. And then Prince Ilian is the heir to, you know, like a really powerful kingdom, but he feels most at home at the sea hunting sirens basically. And then Lyra pisses off her mother, which is kind of like the sea witch, think Ursula, who then punishes her by turning her into like a human, and then their paths meet. And I just loved this book. Like, again, I was hooked reading this. I loved it. And I think because it was unexpected, I wasn't going in expecting, you know, to find a new favourite book, but I really did enjoy this, and it's a standalone as well. A lot of books now are like the start of series and things like that, but this is a standalone, and I really enjoyed that. Everything sort of wrapped up kind of nicely. There is, you know, elements you could open it up to another book, but it finished nicely and I enjoyed that. So the next favourite that I have is Bad For You by J. Daniels. J. Daniels was an author I discovered this year, and with this book first actually, I was sent it for review, and it's kind of, I've read them kind of out of order. This is the third book in the series, but each book is like a standalone, if that makes sense. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really nice contemporary kind of edgy romance read. So it's between Sean and Shayla, and they work in the same restaurant. He's the chef, she's like a waitress, and he's really quiet, doesn't really talk, but Shayla is really talkative. She's this really bubbly, vibrant person, and she really like talks to Sean, and like he doesn't really talk back a lot of the time, but then she invites him to a party and he like literally just doesn't show up. So things have been strained between them. She doesn't really talk to him anymore, but he misses her, and then things sort of kind of go from there. Really enjoyed this. Like I say, it was a bit of a slow start, but then once I hit a certain point, it just flew by, and I ended up really enjoying that. So yeah, that was definitely a favourite. And then my last favourites of the year were, again, unexpected favourites. I was on Goodreads one day and I saw someone updating what they were reading, and they were reading the first book in the series. And I thought, oh, that seems interesting. Went on there, read the synopsis, downloaded the first book onto my Kindle, started reading it, read it in just over 24 hours. I was obsessed. I read them in December, and I absolutely love them. I read one after the other, devoured them. I got my boss reading them, she devoured them. So yeah, they were a completely unexpected favourite, but I loved them, and I loved them so much that I had to get the physical copies. And it's the McGabe trilogy by Maya Banks. So the first one is In Bed with a Highlander. The second one is Seduction of a Highland Lass, and the third one is Never Love a Highlander. And these books, I devoured them. They are obviously Scottish Highlander romance, and something from just the get-go with the first one, I absolutely just devoured them. They were really good. I loved the characters, the setting. I just loved the romance. It was so really well done. They are some of the best romance books I've read in quite a while. And I've kind of, after reading them, I got into a little bit of a slump, because after reading them, I was like, I don't know what to read now, because I was so sad that I'd finished that series, and that series had been so good. Everything else was kind of like meh. in comparison, which sounds so odd, but it's true. And I've still not really kind of gotten out of that funk yet. That's how good they were. So yeah, that's all my favourite books, guys, from 2018. Are any of these books on your favourite books of the year? Let me know what your favourite book to read this year was. Yeah, I'd always love to know. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys, and here's to a good reading year in 2019. Bye, guys.